The rain pounded against the cracked windshield of Sarah's old pickup truck like 1,000 accusing fingers, each drop echoing the taunts that still rang in her ears. Look at her, the welfare queen with her snot-nosed brat. One of the bullies had sneered earlier that day, right in the middle of the crowded school parking lot. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white, as her 8-year-old son, Tommy, sat silently beside her, his small face streaked with tears he was trying so hard to hide. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but instead, she swallowed the rage that burned in her chest, a rage forged in the fires of battles long past. Little did those cruel strangers know, Sarah wasn't just any single mom scraping by. She was Staff Sergeant Sarah Ramirez, U.S. Marine Corps, retired after 2 tours in Afghanistan, where she'd stared down death itself. But today, in this quiet suburban hell, her greatest war was just beginning. Sarah's life hadn't always been this way. Born in a dusty border town in Texas, she grew up with a father who worked 3 jobs and a mother who taught her that strength wasn't about muscles, but about the fire in your soul. At 18, Sarah enlisted in the Marines, driven by a need to prove herself and escape the cycle of poverty that had claimed so many in her family. Boot camp was brutal. Endless drills, screaming drill instructors, and nights where doubt clawed at her mind. But she thrived. She became a sharpshooter, a leader, earning commendations for her cool head under fire. In Afghanistan, she led patrols through IE-littered valleys, saved lives, and lost friends. The day an ambush claimed her best buddy, Mike, she carried his body back to base, vowing never to let fear win again. But war changes you. When she returned home, pregnant from a brief romance with a fellow Marine who didn't stick around, the nightmares followed. PTSD whispered in the dark, and civilian life felt like a foreign land. Jobs were scarce for a woman with her scars, both visible and hidden. She moved to this small town in Oregon for a fresh start, taking a part-time gig at a diner while raising Tommy alone. He was her anchor, her reason to keep fighting, with his wide eyes and infectious laugh that reminded her of the good in the world. Tommy was a bright kid, full of curiosity and kindness, but school had become a battlefield of its own. At Jefferson Elementary, a group of older boys, led by Jake, the son of the town's wealthy real estate mogul, had zeroed in on him. It started small, whispers about his second-hand clothes, Snickers at his lunchbox filled with PB&J sandwiches instead of fancy snacks. But it escalated. One day, they cornered Tommy in the playground, dumping his backpack into a mud puddle while chanting, "Orphan boy, your mom's a loser." Tommy didn't cry then. He just picked up his soggy books and walked away, but inside, it chipped away at his spirit. Sarah noticed the changes, the way he stopped talking about school, the bruises he claimed were from playing too hard. She confronted the principal, but the response was a dismissive shrug. Boys will be boys. It infuriated her, reminding her of the bureaucracy she'd hated in the military. But she held back, not wanting to be that mom, the one who overreacted. Deep down, though, the Marine in her stirred, waiting for the right moment. The humiliation peaked on a crisp autumn afternoon during the school's annual family picnic. Sarah had scraped together enough for a homemade apple pie, hoping it would help Tommy fit in. As families gathered on the grassy field, chatting and laughing, Jake and his crew spotted them. Jake's dad, Mr. Harlan, a burly man with a perpetual smirk, stood nearby, egging on the boys with his own crude jokes. "Hey, Ramirez. Heard you're flipping burgers now. Bet that's a step up from whatever hole you crawled out of," Mr. Harlan boomed, drawing laughs from his cronies. The boys piled on, surrounding Tommy and Sarah. One shoved Tommy, spilling his juice all over his shirt. "Crybaby. Your mom's too poor to buy you new clothes," another jeered. Sarah felt the world narrow, her vision tunneling like it did in combat. Tommy's lower lip trembled, and he clung to her leg, whispering, "Mom, let's just go." The crowd watched, some uncomfortable, others amused. No one intervened. Sarah's heart shattered, not for herself, but for her son, who didn't deserve this cruelty. In that moment, the walls she'd built to blend in cracked. She straightened her back, her voice steady as she said, "Enough." But the bullies didn't stop. Jake stepped forward, mimicking a beggar's pose. "Please, ma'am, spare some change for the trailer trash." The laughter swelled. Sarah's mind flashed to Kandahar, to the split-second decisions that saved lives. She could have lashed out, but violence wasn't the answer. Not here, not with Tommy watching. Instead, she knelt down to Tommy's level, wiping his tears. "Remember what I taught you, buddy? Strength isn't about fighting, it's about standing tall." Then, rising, she faced the group. "You think humiliating a child makes you strong? I've seen real strength, and this ain't it." Mr. Harlan scoffed. "What would you know about strength, lady? You're just a single mom leeching off the system." The words stung, dredging up memories of her discharge. Honorable, but marred by the invisible wounds that made employers wary. Sarah had faced IEDs, sniper fire, and the loss of comrades. Yet here she was, reduced to a stereotype. The challenge was clear. Not just the bullies, but the town's indifference, the judgment of her past, and her own fear of revealing too much. That night, as Tommy slept fitfully, Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, staring at an old photo from her Marine days. In it, she stood proud in uniform, rifle slung over her shoulder, surrounded by her squad. The woman in that picture seemed unbreakable, but motherhood had softened her edges, made her vulnerable in ways war never could. The next day, the taunts continued online. Anonymous posts on the community's Facebook group calling her a deadbeat and questioning her fitness as a parent. Tommy came home with a black eye, claiming he fell. Sarah's resolve hardened. She couldn't let this destroy her son. Drawing on her training, she devised a plan, not one of confrontation, but of quiet power. First, she reached out to other parents who'd been silent witnesses, sharing her story in a measured email. "I've fought for this country," she wrote, "but now I'm fighting for my child. If we don't stand up, who will?" Responses trickled in, some apologetic, others supportive. One mom, Lisa, whose daughter had been bullied too, offered to help organize a meeting. The key challenge came at the school board meeting 2 weeks later. Sarah had prepared like she would for a mission briefing: facts, evidence, and unyielding determination. Tommy sat beside her, nervous but proud. Mr. Harlan and Jake were there, smug as ever, with a lawyer in tow. As Sarah stood to speak, her voice trembled at first. "I'm Sarah Ramirez, mother of Tommy. But I'm also a former Marine. I served 2 tours, led men and women into battle, and came home to raise my son alone. What happened at the picnic wasn't just kids being kids. It was cruelty, enabled by adults who should know better." She detailed the incidents, showing photos of Tommy's bruises and screenshots of the online harassment. The room grew silent. Mr. Harlan interrupted. "This is ridiculous. She's exaggerating for sympathy." But Sarah didn't flinch. "Sympathy? I don't need it. I've earned my stripes. What I need is accountability." She turned to Jake. "Son, bullying doesn't make you tough. It makes you weak. Real strength is kindness, even when it's hard." The turning point was when Tommy spoke up, his small voice echoing in the hall. "I just want to go to school without being scared." Tears flowed freely now, not just from him, but from others in the audience. Lisa stood next, sharing her story, then another parent, and another. The board, pressured by the growing chorus, promised an investigation and anti-bullying workshops. Mr. Harlan stormed out, but not before muttering threats. Later, he confronted Sarah in the parking lot, his face red with rage. "You think you're a hero? You're nothing." Sarah met his gaze, her Marine training kicking in. "I've faced worse than you, sir." And I walked away. She didn't raise a fist. Her words were her weapon. Tommy watched from the car, eyes wide with awe. Resolution didn't come overnight. The school implemented changes, counseling for Jake and his friends, assemblies on empathy. Sarah volunteered to speak at one, sharing her Marine experiences without glorifying war, emphasizing resilience and compassion. "In the core, we leave no one behind," she said. "That's how we should live here too." Tommy blossomed, making friends who admired his mom's courage. He even started a kindness club at school, where kids shared stories of overcoming hurt. Sarah found a better job at a local veteran-owned business, where her skills were valued. The online trolls faded, replaced by messages of support. One evening, as she tucked Tommy in, he whispered, "Mom, you're my hero." She hugged him tight, the emotional weight lifting. Her greatest victory wasn't in battlefields abroad, but in protecting the home she'd built. But challenges lingered. PTSD episodes still came, triggered by loud noises or crowds, reminding her that healing wasn't linear. There were nights she cried alone, questioning if she was enough.